Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to the Coaching Corner. It is me, Jamila, aka the IEP Coach. Whoops, I need to mute the others. Here it is. There we go. So, welcome to the Coaching Corner. It's me, Jamila, aka the IP Coach. Thank you all for joining in and coming in and coming in. As always, share this live out with as many people as possible. And as I'm telling you to share it out, I am sharing it out as well. I hope you was able to get out and enjoy this lovely weather. Over here on the East Coast, it is nice and sunny. It got up to 90 degrees yesterday in Philly, and it's about 80 today. So the weather is amazing. So definitely make sure, I hope you are getting out and getting some of this amazing weather. I hope you're getting out and getting some sun. Definitely get some of that sun, get some of that vitamin D. It's good for the skin. So make sure, yes, you definitely. You get out there and enjoy the weather. And yes, let's share this out, share this live out with as well, tongue tied with as many people as possible. Share out the live, share out the live, share out the live. And I'm making sure we are live on all of our platforms, wherever you're tuning in from, making sure that you are live. And for those of you who are new, I am Jamila, aka the IEP Coach. I am the founder of the IEP Coach LLC. We are an education consulting company, and we specialize in providing special education centered support to our teachers and parents through our coaching, professional development, and parent workshops, because we truly believe when you support teachers in their roles, they are more likely to stay, they feel empowered, and they're getting the training that they need, which benefits the student. And for the parents, when you educate the parents, they are more likely to confidently advocate for themselves as well as their children. And that's a win-win on both sides. So we definitely want to do that. And that's what we do here at the IEP Coach. So thank you for tuning in. We go live every Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to discuss all things special education. And so I'm just making sure that we are live like we should. For those of you who are joining in, let me know where you are tuning in from. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know what city you are tuning in from. And let me see. Let me make sure we are live on our Facebook page, because we had a little trouble last time. Let me just double check and make sure we are all good. Let me make sure we're all good. Okay. Okay, let's make sure we're good. Yep, we are live. We are live. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So tonight, we are going to talk about end of the year preparation, because it's quickly approaching. We'll start May tomorrow. May 1st is tomorrow. And some school districts, um you end the end of May. Some of you end in June. Like some school districts, they're going like to June 26th. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. But I just want to talk about some things you need to do when you are closing out the end of the year, because definitely some things teacher wise you need to do when you're closing out the year. So, first things first. Now, if you are a special education teacher and your students are going to another school, so they're going to transition from your school to another school, or even transition from your grade to another grade, and it's a real big transition, you definitely want to prepare them for that transition. Meaning, you definitely want to do a some type of what's the word called, you definitely want to do like a where they can meet their soon to be case manager, or they can like an open house for them. When you have freshmen, they get to do some things a little earlier so they can familiarize themselves with the school, with their schedule, and things like that. You want to do the same thing for your students. So in past years, I used to do, I guess you can call it like a transition trip. I would communicate with the emotional support teacher who was at the new school that my students would be going to. So we would have that. And then we would schedule a time for my current students to come over to that building. And that case manager in the new building, she had my previous students. So she would pick two of those students. They would take my students on a tour. And then also, I had sent over questions that my students had, and they would answer it. Like a lot of the questions were, how can I be successful here? What do I need to do to be successful? And they would answer their questions. And they also got to meet the principal at the school. So that way, they're able to put some faces with some names. So that way, when they came over to the new building, is not surprise, so much of a surprise, and so like, oh my gosh, everything is new. You have some familiarity. Okay, so you definitely want to do that. All right, now if your student is graduating from high school or getting ready to graduate from high school and they're going to college and they are going to need student support at that higher learning institution, you definitely want to make sure a reevaluation gets done before they graduate. So that way it's updated testing in their IEP, because they're going to need that updated report to take to the student services department at their university, because they want up-to-date information. Students who still require support, the department wants that up-to-date information, not an old IEP, not a reevaluation that's from 3 years ago with old data. They want fresh data. So you definitely want to make sure any of your seniors that are seeking high post-secondary education and they require student service support while they're in college, you definitely want to make sure they get a reevaluation done with new information, with new testing, so that way that reevaluation report has new information, updated testing, and the institution can utilize that. Okay, so that was tip number 2. Tip number 3, you want to make sure that any student coming for the next year, any student that has an IEP that is due September or October or even August, you want to make sure that you do those IEPs before the school year is out. Now, that's best practice, because you don't want the school year starting and you have an IEP to do, because it's a brand new school year. Therefore, teachers are still getting to know the students. They're still getting to know them, and they're not going to have a lot of present data for you, and you're going to have to rely on last year's data. So you want to make sure any IEPs that are due over the summer or September or October, before like the beginning of October, you want to make sure they are done before the end of the school year. And this does not mean that there are no IEPs that will occur at the beginning of the year. You just want to make sure you complete the ones on your case. So you definitely want to get those completed before anyone that's due over the summer, due in September, due like very early October. You want to make sure they get done before this current school year ends, okay? Because you do not want to start the school year and you have IEPs and things to do, because it's going to be a struggle for you getting input from the current teachers, because they're getting to know, they just met that student and they're getting to know them. Okay. All right. That was tip number 3. That was tip number 4, I think. That was tip 3. Tip number 4, you want to make sure your students that you have, you want to save any of their testing information. So any assessments you did with that student, projects you did with that student, you want to save it in a folder, because when I tell you that student can transfer to another school, that student can move on to the next grade, and let's say there's litigation that may happen, which has happened to me 2 or 3 times, and they have asked, oh, can you give us any data you have on that student? I always kept my students testing information, so like projects we did, assessments we did, I always saved them for a year, because things like this can happen. A lawyer can pop up, or a litigation case can pop up, and they want to know, well, how did the student do in your class last year? And you don't want to be like, oh, I threw everything in the trash, or I give everything to the student. You definitely want to hold on to any assessments or tests that you did. You want to hold on to them for at least a year. okay? Because you never know what can happen. So you want to hold on to that testing information for a year. And then now, tip number 5, touch base with your parents and caregivers. Ask them if they have any questions. You may want to, if you definitely have a lot of students who are moving on to a new building, you definitely want to prep the parents for how it's going to be at the new school, what the schedule is like, what that routine is going to be like, especially if you're going from elementary to middle, and especially if you're going from middle to high school. You definitely want to touch base with your parents and caregivers so that way they know like what to expect. Okay, and it's not so shocking, like, oh my God, what is this? What are you doing? And you know what I mean? And you want to make sure you give them a contact person that they can be in contact with in the event they have any questions, because you no longer will be the case manager for that child. You're going to be moving on to, excuse me, those students are going to be moving on to another school. All right, we have a question here. What do you think about adding brain training as part of the IEP prescriptive planning? So if it aligns with so Dr. William H, if this aligns with their needs in their IEP, then that's something that you can present at the IEP meeting or present with their parents. If it's something that's going to support them with their needs that are documented in their IEP, then that could be something, but you need to be very specific as what does that look like and how it's going to benefit the student. And I hope that answered your question. All right, so let me just recap the tips. So one, you definitely want to do like a transition orientation to the new school if your students are leaving the school. Again, if they're going from elementary to middle or middle to high school, you definitely want to do some type of transition orientation, taking a trip over there, or if it has to be virtual, it can be virtual. You want to make sure that if you have high schoolers who will be going to college or a vocational school and they need student support services from their institution, you definitely want to make sure they have an updated reevaluation with updated testing, so that way they are presenting fresh data to that school as to why they need those accommodations. Number 3, you want to make sure that you save any testing information, assessments, projects you've done with students. You want to make sure you save that for at least a year, because you never know what happens, what's going to come later on. Okay, you will never know. When I tell you, things pop up, parents may want to take them to another school and the school wants information from you, or hey, parents decide to sue for whatever reason, and the district wants to know, oh well, how did they do in your class? You have that data and you want to save it for at least a year. Tip number 4, you want to make sure any IEPs that you have, um any IEPs that you have that are due over August, September, and I want to say very early October, you want to make sure you get those done before the school year is out, because you don't want to start the new year having to do IEPs, because one, those students are going to have new teachers, and then you're going to have to get date, you're going to be requesting input from them, and they're going to be like, I don't have any input, I just met the kid, I don't know, I'm still learning the kid. So you want to get it done before the school year ends. That way you still have a lot of data, and actually the teachers will be able to reflect on the whole entire year because they've been with that student for an entire year. Okay, and then last but not least, tip number 5, you want to make sure that you communicate with your parents and your caregivers just about any next steps. Ask them if they have any questions, ask them if they have any concerns, um, and just prepare them for any changes that will occur, especially if they're transitioning from one school to a new school. Okay, you definitely want to um, share that information with them, and also give them a person that they can touch base with at the new school if they have questions, and also what to expect for the upcoming school year. You know what I mean? Let them know, hey, if they're going from 5th grade to 6th grade, hey, this is what 6th grade is going to be like. You can even do a video and send it out to your parents. You know what I mean? Because, hey, everyone's busy. You may not have time to, I mean, you can send an email and then you can have like a video in there of you just discussing all of this, or it could be a presentation of you discussing this. So that way the parent can watch it over and over. And if they have questions, they can email you. Okay, so those are just my end of the year tips. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone that registered for the request to results webinar. It was an amazing webinar. If you missed it, I'm going to drop the link here. You can get access to the webinar and the toolkit, because there was a toolkit that we sold at the end of the webinar. You can get all of it now for $97, or if you just want the toolkit, you can get it for $57. And I'm going to drop the link here for you. Request to results webinar toolkit. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Or if you're on Instagram, you could click the link in our bio and it will take you there. But I'm also going to tag it here in the chat for you, and I'm going to pin it. The webinar was great. It was great engagement from you all. I greatly appreciate you, coming and attending. It was great. And I knew, some people, hey, they may have missed it. So definitely here is the link. So that way you'll have access to the webinar and the toolkit. And if you just want the toolkit, you can just get the toolkit as well. Okay. Let me make sure that is, that's, okay. I'm going to pin that. And let me make sure it's showing up over here on LinkedIn. So again, yes, if you missed our request to results webinar and you want to take advantage, remember that webinar was to help you give you tips on how to make evaluation requests or reevaluation requests. And then we also sold a toolkit at the end. And that toolkit is amazing. That toolkit, you get actual examples of requests. We give you video directions going step by step on how to use the toolkit to create your requests. You get video step by step directions. You get actual requests that I have used as a supervisor to make requests, and you get a template in there, and you get customer support, and you get the webinar with it. Okay. And that's $97. Or if you just want the toolkit by itself, you can get that for $57. Okay. So thank you all again. And also, we're going to be sharing information out, because a lot of parents, you have asked me about ABA therapy, what it is and what it looks like. So at the Autism in Black conference, I actually met a therapist that provides ABA therapy, and she's going to do a free webinar for you guys. So I'm going to be dropping that link. Actually, I'm going to drop it tonight, but I'm also going to be putting it in our link in our bio, so that way you all have the information, so that way you can register. Okay, because a lot of you had a lot of questions. Now, ABA, that's not my lane. So I said, why not get a professional, an expert who does that, who can speak to you all and answer your questions. Okay, so we'll be posting that soon. Now, does anyone have any questions? If you have any questions, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat right now. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. And I know it may take you a minute to type, so I'm going to give you a minute or two to type your response. Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. And I hope that these tips were very helpful. Definitely utilize them. Parents, definitely utilize them. Hey, if you know your child's going to another school, definitely touch base with the teachers or the case manager to see about that transition process. What is it going to be like? All right, it looks like we have no questions. If you do have questions later on, you can definitely DM us at the IEP Coach LLC. We are pretty consistent on all our platforms, and we are very responsive. Okay. So again, if you have questions later, just DM us your questions and we can answer them. All right. So definitely make sure you take advantage of the toolkit. I just dropped it in the comments. Take advantage of it. And then, you guys, if you have any questions, DM us. As always, stay safe, be kind to yourself, and give yourself grace. Okay. And we will see you all next Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You have an amazing evening.